Welcome to Biztech's Technology Show, the show where we feature tech companies operating globally, talking about their solutions and how they make a difference to their customers' businesses. Now, today our conversation is with Paul Kleinschnitz. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at BlueVoyant. Now, BlueVoyant was founded in 2017 and is headquarters in New York. It's a cybersecurity company that offers end-to-end internal and external cyber defense platforms for enterprises. Now, PK, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. We're a big fan.
Now, thank you very much, PK. Now, for a start, could you give us an overview of the company and what you do?
Yeah, so the company was founded about 4.5 years ago, and it was founded with the mission of providing cyber defense solutions to any organization, depending on regardless of the size and regardless of the location. We know that the attackers are increasing. The cyber threat has never been more fierce than it is today. And we pride ourselves in providing 24/7 real-time monitoring of our clients' environments to help them defend against those attackers. We've got both internal and external cyber defense. We've also got some of the best experts in the industry that we've hired from Fortune 500 and some of the best intel industries across the globe.
Now, so it's interesting. I did some research, obviously, to prepare for this conversation, and you've got people from everything from the NSA to FBI to IDF working for you. How has that helped in terms of blending solutions to help you globally?
So it's been instrumental. Most VC-backed companies start with a solution that's good enough, and they grow that solution with demand. BlueVoyant was actually birthed in a much different way. We had a mission of building the best, building military-grade solutions, and building that by people who have got the experience in defending some of the most critical assets in the world. So a lot of people think that our expertise and those that we hire are the ones behind the glass doing the monitoring, but actually they're the ones who built the solutions. They know where the threats are. They know how to, and how we should be defending, and they're the architects of our platforms. So we're very proud that we're able to attract that type of talent. It's a culture where they've got access to data that most don't. They've got access to technology and means that most don't, and they thoroughly enjoy solving problems and defending against the adversary.
Okay, so you've got 4 lines of business. Tell us what they are and how they're helping your customers.
Yeah, so we look at this this problem from an internal and external perspective at a high level. So we know the obvious threats are internal. We know that the organizations have to build the fortitude and the expertise and the insights to defend their internal assets. And that is an obvious threat, and that is an obvious investment. But what is maybe not so obvious and becoming really the strongest threat vector and the biggest vulnerability are organizations' supply chain. In a lot of cases, their supply chain or the vendors that they're dependent on are the weakest link. So BlueVoyant also provides external cyber defense as well as internal cyber defense. We've got data and insights that we provide from a first-party perspective. And as you mentioned, we've got some of the best experts in the industry that provide professional services to support our internal and external cyber defense platforms.
Okay, PK, you're new to Asia. Tell me why, if I'm a CIO and I'm wearing a CIO hat and I'm looking at this very crowded cybersecurity vendor space, why should I select BlueVoyant? What makes you unique?
Yeah, so if you think about, let's start with the internal defense. As you mentioned earlier, the threats have never been greater. There's an overwhelming amount of technology at individuals' fingertips. But there's lack of resources. There's lack of data. There's lack of insights to make that actionable and really leverage that to defend against the adversaries. So from an internal perspective, we've developed platforms to where our clients have data mobility, meaning we're not requiring them to move their data to our SOC. We'll meet them where they're at, and we are very much a cloud-native solution. In addition to that, we provide technology fluidity. So we support, you name a technology as it relates to endpoint or SIM or whatnot, we support most of them. And we are very, very strong as it relates to Microsoft and Splunk. We are the Microsoft MDR Partner of the Year. And I would attest that there's no one better at designing, configuring, managing, and monitoring the Microsoft and Splunk technologies on behalf of our clients. So because we don't require a move of data, we're able to meet clients where they're at and create a hybrid monitoring and remediation partnership with them from an internal perspective. From an external perspective, we provide actual cyber defenses versus simply cyber scoring. So where a lot of organizations will provide you score as it relates to your supply chain, we provide actual defenses. So we published a report here recently that showed that over 97% of all organizations have seen some sort of negative impact based on a breach downstream in their ecosystem within their supply chain, because they don't have the resources or insights or ability to look that far, let alone mitigate it. So we look at an organization, we help them with their internal defenses, which is fairly obvious. And then we go beyond that, we identify all of their partners and all their downstream vendors and supply chain. And we also monitor those in a 24/7 fashion. And then when we identify vulnerabilities on our client's behalf, we contact the suppliers directly and help them mitigate and resolve those issues. So it is truly an end-to-end internal and external cyber defense platform and capability.
And I think that's really quite a sweet spot that probably distinguishes you from other people, because one of the key challenges, as you correctly pointed out, is because the threats are coming from the supply chain itself, getting down to that point is going to be very difficult for an individual company. Whereas working together with you and you going to that particular point and working with that particular source of weakness, that really helps to mitigate the issues at source.
Well, and it really does. And what's interesting is the more your internal defenses get stronger, you're actually encouraging, or the adversaries are encouraged to go to where the weakest link is a lot of times, which is those you're dependent on. Our supply chains are completely connected from a digital perspective these days. And therefore, that's where the threats are going. And most providers don't have the access to the data that we have, let alone the expertise and the technology to actually defend versus just identify. A score is great, and from a point in time perspective, but it really doesn't help you from a day-to-day 24/7, and certainly doesn't help you from a remediation perspective.
Now, PK, how has the pandemic affected BlueVoyant, and especially the cybersecurity landscape in general, particularly because the way we've all worked has changed and therefore vulnerabilities have increased?
It's so true. So whether it's COVID or not, our mission has been has been the same. We want to provide best-in-class solutions to everyone and anyone within the globe. The pandemic has done two things. One, it's highlighted vulnerabilities and threats that were already existing, quite frankly, but it also dissolved the perimeter. Right, we're all working in hybrid scenarios. We're all connected. Therefore, what maybe we could have managed from an endpoint perspective or a perimeter perspective, we can't. Those perimeters have dissolved. So the threats have increased. The landscape, or the scope of which we need to defend, has increased significantly, and therefore the solutions and the providers need to adapt.
Okay, and so, which brings me to my next question. When you talk about solutions, you made a couple of key acquisitions in 2021. You bought a company called Markley, Concanon, and also 201 Group.
Yes.
How do they fit into your strategy and offerings to customers?
So it's a great question, and those acquisitions were very strategic in nature. They were not, revenue based or geographically based necessarily, but they're strategic in nature because it gives us the expertise that we need to really get the full value out of technology. So, as an example, Managed Sentinel, which was an acquisition, in 2020, gave us, the capability to configure and deploy and really get the most out of Microsoft. The Concanon acquisition was the exact same strategic acquisition, but as in terms of Splunk, right? So the Concanon experts know Splunk better than most, or maybe anyone, and therefore allows us to help our clients move to the Splunk cloud, configure Splunk, and then gives us the right and the credentials to help them manage it over time. The same thing with the 202 group. So we know that to provide a true cyber defense strategy for our clients, it requires three things. And this is why I personally love cyber, because cyber cannot be solved by tech alone, cannot be solved by human alone, and can't be solved by data alone, but it requires all three. So when we make acquisitions like the ones you mentioned, it really is bringing in the expertise to unlock the technology, to leverage the data we have and provide end-to-end solutions both internally and externally for our clients.
Now, PK, you've just announced a $250 million funding round. And so obviously that takes you well into unicorn territory. Tell us about how the company plans to deploy the funds.
Yeah, so first of all, we're very excited about the raise. It was well beyond our goals. And it did a number of things. It continued to validate our position and our value prop within the community, within the investor community, and within the technology community. It also allowed us to bring on new and strategic investors who are going to partner with us to accelerate growth, define the product, and invest in our clients. So to answer your question directly, we're going to leverage these funds to continue to invest in our technology. We know that our technology is always going to have to evolve, and we're committed to it being, one step ahead of competition and adversaries. We're going to continue to invest in expanding geographically. So we entered 2021 in 9 countries. We exited in 18 countries. We're going to see similar growth this year. And we're going to invest in our clients. We're going to make sure our clients not only have the best technology, but have the best service and have the best capabilities in order to defend against the adversary. And then lastly, and certainly not leastly, we're going to invest in our people. So we're going to continue to invest in the people that we've hired, and we're going to continue to grow the company. We doubled our company year over year. So this time last year, we're roughly 300 employees. We're close to 600 today. And I think we're hiring roughly a person a day. And we're able to maintain that quality. And it's a very special culture where whether you're a technologist or a marketing and sales individual, it's a well-intended culture here at BlueVoyant, but it's also, we've got technology and data that most don't. And it's a very fun place to be a technologist.
Interesting. And speaking of Asia, you've got a footprint in Australia and Philippines, and you're expanding in Asia. You're setting up an office in Singapore. Tell us what's the strategy around the Singapore setup and also your strategy for Asia.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we've got presence in Philippines and Australia. We've got some very fruitful and successful joint ventures and partnerships there. And we are in the process, as we speak, opening an office in Singapore. We've hired leadership, and we're building out a team there. And our strategy really is simple. It's to leverage what we've built, both from a technology perspective, but also from a partnership and an ecosystem. And we know that Singapore is key in Asia Pac. We know that it's very important to have people there. We're very committed to hire local and to staff that up so that we can provide the services and the technology we have to that market. We actually see our job is, we have a responsibility to provide what we have to as many within the globe as we can, and to do it as local as we can. By the way, we've done the same thing in Europe. We've quadrupled the size of our teams in both our UK offices, the Budapest office, which I'm actually dialing in from today, and very, very committed to local presence, both from a go-to-market, but more importantly, from a customer service perspective.
Now, what do you see are the key trends for cybersecurity this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the geopolitical landscape is doing two things. One is it's highlighting an issue that's already there. So one of the things that it's always been a challenge for those of us who've been in cyber for decades is the awareness to the true problem, right? So I often say that you don't truly understand the value of cybersecurity until it's too late, meaning until you've had an issue. And the climate we're in is providing insights, and I think in an important way, to just where the threats are. But in addition to that, the threats are actually increasing. There's no doubt about that. The cyber threats are increasing. Cyber is now a strategy as it relates to warfare. It's real. And the other thing that's maybe not so obvious, it's creating additional adversarial talent and capacity. So as the need within, the war, so to speak, for additional talent and capacity, those resources are going to be redeployed, so to speak, once, the scenario, dies down. So my point is the threats are increasing. The capacity or the talent on the adversarial side is increasing, and organizations need to make sure that they are prepared for increased threats and for increased breaches, both internally and externally. And whether it's BlueVoyant or someone else, really need to make sure they've got partners that help them build out that capability, because there's not enough resources in the world to defend from within. You really need a partner. And
the key thing is, PK, do you think from where you're sitting, particularly in the Europe and North America, that CIOs are now saying, yes, we've been aware, yes, we have been investing, because of the geopolitical situation, I think we need to invest even more?
Yes, but I also think, going back to our earlier conversation, where most of the investment has been focused on internal cyber defense. The external cyber defense, or the threats within the vendor ecosystem or the suppliers, are even more vulnerable. And therefore, what we're seeing and how we're coaching our clients is, okay, great, you've spent time internally. Well, you've got to look at your vulnerabilities and your exposure externally and make sure you've got solutions that can help you identify and mitigate and remediate issues within your supply chain, because that is the next threat vector, and that is where the vulnerabilities are. And quite frankly, that's where, and the adversaries know this, they know where the vulnerability is, and criminals are like water. Right, they go to the least path of resistance to get to the hole, and right now the holes are outside of a CIO's control, which is their third party, which is their supply chain.
Now, PK, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for enlightening us. But before you leave, could you share some final thoughts and maybe sagely words of wisdom?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks again for having us. I guess what I would say is, the threats are real, and it may seem overwhelming in terms of providing defenses against it. But just as long as you are prepared for it, and you've got the right insights, you know how to leverage the right technology, and you've got the right partner resources, you will be able to defend against this. This is not something that is unachievable, but it's not something you should try to do on your own. So whether it's BlueVoyant or somewhere else, find a partner. Make sure they've got the right insights and the right technology, and we'll defend against this together.
Now, PK, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Absolutely, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Paul Kleinschnitz, the Chief Commercial Officer of BlueVoyant, on Biztech's Technology Show. This video and podcast will be on our various social media platforms, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.